Okay, so the other day my friend Bunny came over, and he was watching me make a piece of Buck U2 art, which was the one that was called Rogered Ramjet. And he was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was tracing out an airplane. And I said, "Well, I'm tracing out an airplane." And he said, "Well, why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "Well, that's how I make the cartoon. I take a silhouette or a shape of whatever I want. I create a loose layer around the top of it, like this," which he thought was pretty interesting. It's going to take me a while to wander around the edge of our rhinoceros here. I bet you can't guess what joke I'm going to make at the end of this, and that's the prize for hanging in with me. And it was someone else who was a really good friend of mine who said that, "Dylan, you should really sit down and show people how you do that. It's actually pretty interesting." They'd watch me do it one day, and there was another person too that really liked my jokes, but I think they enjoyed watching me come up with the ideas. So this is actually one I came up with a couple days ago, and now I'm gonna straighten out the edges here to follow. I don't like to have curvy edges, or I don't like to have the pixelated edges, I should say, and so I like to convert it to nice smooth lines with a shape. Adobe Illustrator, I guess, is better known for vectors, but I know Photoshop a lot better than I know Illustrator, and Illustrator drives me nuts because of it. So I'm just going to use Photoshop to do this. At least it gives me a file that I can stretch to be any size, so if I want to make a t-shirt, like if somebody actually liked one of my cartoons enough to say, "Hey, I'd like that picture on a t-shirt," then I can make a t-shirt out of it. Or if somebody said, "Well, I want that on a sign," I could do that, or on a mug, or whatever you wanted. This is part of selling the graphic design business, and why I do that as one of my side interests. Besides making cartoons, I'm a graphic designer on the side. And this is very similar to work I did in back at the turn of the millennium. It would have been 1999. There was a turn of the millennium mining conference over in Sudbury, and I got hired to do an interactive CD for it. Originally, it was supposed to be done with HTML, and it was just supposed to be an executable file. And I'd actually talked to some Russians, of all people, who had done this interactive CD that I had shipped in from Russia, which was kind of funny, in brown paper envelope. I couldn't believe there's still part of the world where they wrap packages in paper and heavy butcher paper and twine, of all things. But it was a really neat interactive CD of Russian art. So I emailed the creators, and they're like, "Hey, that's so neat that you like what we did. We'll create a version of it for you to use for your interactive CD, and maybe you buy us a case of beer someday if it works out for you." And I thought that was really neat. Until the day that we had to go over and show the initial mock-up of the CD to the folks that were sponsoring it from the mining conference. So it was like a lot of executives from mining boards and stuff like that. And I was waiting and waiting to get this thing, and finally the morning of, we got this file, and lo and behold, it had a virus on it. It was a really common virus, and it didn't infect my computer, because of course one of my other side businesses, or what I'm mostly known locally for, is fixing computers and on-site technical support, consulting, just anything technical. Lately it's been a lot of dealing with people's remotes and plugging wires into televisions. I got a nice hug the other day from a client who was just thrilled that I managed to get her DVD player working on her television, and it's just a matter of knowing which wires to hook up, and yet that's a certain amount of business, because it's just confusing to the regular public, and so I get to be a technical person. And so anyways, somewhere there was a story. The mining conference. So they didn't like the initial CD. I didn't like that the Russians had sent me a virus. I thought that was just incredibly rude, as a matter of fact. They just that's just not good business practice, because if it had worked out, and it did work out, like I got the gig, like they were impressed enough to sign a contract and say that they'd pay us X amount to put their CD together, and it had terms, stuff be delivered by this time and that time and whatever to complete this. Well, anyways, it worked out. They were impressed enough, except for they really didn't like how we had it working with the HTML, and wanted it done another way. And also we'd used the big nickel in the presentation. At that time, the big nickel had the smokestacks on it up there, the super stack when you're coming into to Sudbury on the highway. That's really neat. It's like the biggest smokestack in the world, and it was just made very clear to us, you absolutely do not show that in this interactive CD. It's not about the output of the mining industry. It's about the input of the mining industry. So we don't talk about the output. So it's like, okay, well, I'll play by their rules, and I did the CD, and within this process, we were trying to get logos from all these sponsors so we could do this booth layout, which was pretty much the most complicated part of the CD. Like, it was a map, and you clicked on the booth, and you got information about that vendor. It was very fancy, cutting edge for 1999 going into 2000. Wouldn't you know it? So we were trying to get all these companies to come up with digital versions of their logos, and lo and behold, most of them really didn't have nice versions. Got a lot of scanned off the letterhead versions. I almost said leatherhead. I think it's because I'm thinking a rhinoceros skin as I go around the rhinoceros's face here, in case you forgot what I was doing. And so I got really practiced with tracing things off of absurd, here's a scan, retrace and recreate the logo of this and that. And it's it makes me want to write stories about a guy who actually makes a fortune somehow out of digital forgery, being able to recreate logos for organizations or something like that, as if brand identity was actually important or something like that. And so that's where I first picked up my skills in being able to trace out things like this. Now, one of the neat things that I learned from that, and there's somebody who I really owe a thank you to, and I don't have my emails anymore, and it's so sad to not know the lady's name or her story, was one of the secretaries for one of the companies. Who was one of the organizers, was really nice, because she actually was able to pull things together at the end and get a lot of information to me, the one who knew the information. And I suddenly realized the value of people in the position of executive secretaries. I don't know how many people there would have ever watched the Japanese version of the animated Witchblade. Which is really esoteric cartoon, which is really weird and maybe ultimately pointless, but except for it gives you an idea about it, how corporate politics may operate in Japan. I wouldn't know, because I'm 6 foot tall. I'm guy so white that they named me White, Dylan White, and so I've never thought that Japan would be a particularly friendly place to visit to, an otaku, or however you pronounce it. I don't know. I've just seen it written. It's like there's a generic insult for big white guys, just like me, who are always rather clumsy and tripping over themselves and their words, as you can tell, as I do this like live improv comedy session of tracing out a rhinoceros to make a cartoon out of it. So anyways, I learned the value of a really good secretary, being in the position of central role of communications for the companies. They know everything that's going on. I suppose another good example would be 30 Rock and like crazy relationship between Jack Donaghy and his very needy secretary who just lives to serve him. Oh look, the rhinoceros has an Achilles heel here that didn't get straightened out. So the wonderful thing about it is that it all comes down to communication and knowing what's going on. So in celebration of that, and something that Jack Donaghy once said in an episode of 30 Rock, which I think is a really hilarious sitcom, one of my favorites in the last while. Here's a rhinoceros. Now I need to borrow from another picture if I can to make this more efficient, because I'm all about efficiency. Okay, and the beef goes on is going to get a little bit of an adjustment. We're going to get rid of Billy Bull here. I have some old stuff that I used to use to like copyrights and stuff like that to advertise, and I don't bother with that anymore because I'm really trying hard to believe in the freedom of information, and it's one of those things that's very important to me as well. So, and having learned the lessons of communication and keeping the channels of communication open and whatnot. Let me see. This is it should be a very interesting joke. Can you guess what it is? Because I really like the puns, of course. This one is called Rhino What You, which is a female sheep, mean. Now, I'm also going to take time to just try and I try to do these as instinctively as possible. Just guessing at proportion, I don't know. The sheep looks a little big at the moment compared to rhinoceros. I've only ever seen one rhinoceros, and it looked really unhappy, living as it was in the zoo. And so I don't know, what rhinoceri are really like. Although I understand one thing about rhinoceri from the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy. They like stamping out fires, which is something that's very important to know if you're ever in the African savannah. That's a fact. From an excellent, very, very funny movie, if you're into human anthropology, The Gods Must Be Crazy. And the sequel, Gods Must Be Crazy 2. And then there's another film by the same dude that's really good about animals. Just between the three of those, you have the social, anthropological look at the human species, and this is how I look at it. I like to look at people in terms of animals. You can't look at people from the outside, so you have to look at them from the inside. Essentially, we're self-domesticated creatures, and so here's a joke, a very wry rhino joke. Rhino, what you mean?